All right, we are live. This is Bench Talk Live. We are live, ready to roll. We got a new setup here. You guys can see the new mic setup. So we're ready to roll. We're ready to podcast. So this is Bench Talk Live. This is where I answer your questions live on air. Anything benching, anything you guys want to talk about. All right, so let's get this show kicked off. We got some people joining in on YouTube. You can join us every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. Let's get some questions rolling in. Sip of coffee to the working man. Damn good. Straight espresso. All right, guys, let's file in. Let's get some cues going. I got some great stuff that came in through Instagram the other day. One being a great question from Matt. How do you perform a successful static hold? Now, this is a great question because a static hold, whether you hold the weight at the top or you hold the weight at the bottom or really anywhere in between, anytime you're doing any type of isometric, there's a proper way to do it and a wrong way to do it. Okay, and you're definitely going to change how much you get out of the movement based on how you perform it. So this was a great question sent in by Matt, and my answer to this is you need to bring intensity to what you're doing. Okay, it needs to be intentful, a lot of activation. Those things need to be in place. So you can't just say, for example, we're doing a long pause at chest, okay, at chest level with the bench. All right, we can't just get the weight down there, especially if it's light, and just kind of hang out in that position. All right, because it's not going to take much effort to be down there. All right, it's just not, especially with lightweight. You guys see my recent video on long pause holds, and something that's so beneficial for you for strength off the chest and stability is creating that tension down at the bottom. And you're not going to get anything out of that drill unless you really, really work how hard you're squeezing and all that. So that's absolutely critical for a proper static hold. And then that's, really one of the biggest tips that I can ever give anyone is to bring more intensity to what you're doing. All right. And so I talk about the warm-ups, especially warm-ups, because, it doesn't take much effort to move 30, 50% weight. But when you treat it like it's 100% every time, you're squeezing your lats, you're squeezing everything, squeezing the bar, you're going to get more out of that training significantly, and you're going to add much more significant volume over time. So intensity is definitely something you always want to bring to your training. One of the biggest tips I could ever give. Well, trying to scroll here without sticking my finger in front of the camera. Chris, what advice do you have for an older lifter, 50 years old? So with a lot of our older athletes, aged athletes, experienced athletes, whatever you want to call them, I really have to focus on recovery. Recovery is probably the biggest change that will occur. How much rest you get in between sessions, what you're doing in those sessions, just making sure you're able to recover from what you're doing, because recovery doesn't get better as you age. Doesn't mean you can't get stronger, but recovery capabilities are just going to just be declining at that point. That's just how life works. So that's just something that I have to, pay attention to more with our older athletes. And so some of the biggest things I could tell you, Chris, is just use modifications, use variations where applicable. Don't try to do something that's causing you discomfort or you don't feel like you're recovering from it. I would just watch a lot of the variations that you might have in your training. And it's not a bad thing to have to bench once a week, especially if you attack that one session with a lot of emphasis, get accessories in afterwards, or even do that main bench and then later in the week do accessories, something like that. If that is better for recovery, that's ultimately what you need to worry about. Question from Ian Middleton. Man, I love your stuff. It's taught me a lot. I really appreciate that, Ian. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. I don't know if it's Lane or Ian, but really appreciate that, bud. Thanks for joining us live here on YouTube every Tuesday, 12 p.m., guys. Join us live. All right. Gonna answer some more questions from the Instagram. Sip of coffee for the working man. What would be your advice for someone trying to increase their arch? All right, now, great question, and one that is a very popular topic. Many people want to know, how can I get a better arch? How can I increase my positioning on the bench press? And you see a lot of tricks out there, like putting a foam roller over or under your lower back, and I really don't think that's necessary, and it doesn't really promote where we want to get the extension. It is something that I've utilized with our athletes a bit more as kind of like a mental cue. Hey, don't touch this foam roller. Try to get over it. But ultimately, where we want that arch to come from is through our upper back. So the biggest thing I could tell you if you're trying to increase your arch is warming up the upper back appropriately to gain more range of motion there. So if you can retract your shoulder blades harder, if you can depress your shoulder blades better, that's only going to help your arch and your positioning. Your individual flexibility, that's not something that I would really look to try to change, because you're not going to gain good headway there. All right, we're not all looking like gymnasts doing weird flips over ourselves and putting ourselves in these really weird positions, but not everyone's going to be able to do that, and that's okay. Just because someone has a bigger arch than you doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have a bigger bench. Quite the contrary. Sometimes the arch is kind of a downgraded thing in the training, because you rely on that so much, you just never really build up a lot of full range strength. So if I was to do feet up bench, it's just, that's something I have to do regularly, because it can decline a lot if I'm always doing a competition setup. So yeah, the T-spine work, we just put out a video about a warm-up, an upper back warm-up for bench pressing. Now that video, I would definitely recommend to you. Okay, that is going to be a big thing. That's really made all the difference for me lately in my training with the bench press, is this upper back warm up, and the things I do in this warm up, including the peanut ball and the T-spine, doing the scapular movements that I do, and then doing what I call the big bend holds. That has really made a total 360 in how ready I feel to bench on bench day. I'm able to get into way better positions to the point where I almost sometimes consider going down a rack height. Just getting into some really good positions. Totally changed everything. So I'll check out that video. That's what I'll recommend for you, my friend. Upper back warm up, big benches. Search that on YouTube. Sure to pop up there. That one's a great one. Got some more questions rolling in. We got JH. Hi, Coach Ben. I got a new PR, 140 kilograms at 80 kilograms body weight, but now I'm at a new situation, having to train alone on a commercial gym without safety bars. Any ideas on how I could keep my gains? Thanks again. So I don't necessarily think you need to, and this goes for any situation where you're used to good equipment and now you have to downgrade to worse off equipment. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to take a step back. Just because you're not lifting the same amount of weight doesn't mean you can still see the same progress. I've known people who they would know how much they would get out of using a deadlift bar at a meet, when they had to train, just because of the situation where they trained. They only had access to a shitty power bar. So they kind of kept in their head, hey, I'm going to gain another 40 pounds once I can actually use a deadlift bar. And the only time they got their hands on the deadlift bar was at the meet. All right. So that jump in weight, it's still going to be there. So you still got to do the same things that you would normally do. You try to the best of your ability. For a commercial gym bench, you can put down a thick yoga mat. That'll help cushion it, give it some height. You can put down the Mark Bell Benchmark product there. That thing works great. I had mine over 2 years now. And, there's just ways you can modify a commercial gym bench to make it work, but you're not probably going to lift as much weight. And this is what I tell athletes sometimes you're just stuck with subpar equipment, subpar situation. but you make the most of it. No, you're not going to lift the same amount of weight. So if we're going heavy that day, don't expect a PR, but think of it relative. Don't put excuses into your training, but it's something that you have to account for. If you were, so I know if I bench on my bench versus if I bench somewhere else, I'm usually just not going to get into the same tightness and positioning. It's just not going to happen. So you just got to keep those things in mind. So you don't have to lose gains. You don't have to take a step back. The weight's probably going to decrease, but hey, you make it hard, make training harder. And listen, not moving as much weight is not going to be quite as taxing on the body too. So hey, that works out for you as well. A little bit of a deload, hey. Kelly Williams, what tricep movements do you think are best for a raw bench? Um, I'm not big on any particular tricep movement in general. I like all tricep movements. I think they're all great. I think you just got to kind of experiment and find what really beats you up, what hits on kind of a weak point for you. So I would experiment with a lot of tricep variations. I do like big moves. So close grip bench, obviously JM press has been something that has helped me tremendously in my training as of late. So I would recommend the big tricep moves for sure. Because if you can move more weight, typically that's going to be a great way to get stronger. Some of those isolation tricep movements, to really progress in weight, it have to be fractional because how much at the end of the day are you going to do on a tricep push down and actually engage the triceps, so that's that would be the biggest thing is use those big movements. But accessories, find what works for you, what you like to do. Matt, when should a raw lifter start benching out of elbow sleeves to prep for a meet? So I would say in peaking phase of the last 4 weeks or so, really where you're going to start determining your meet numbers, because you do want to make it realistic to what's going to happen at the meet. In that scenario, you can't wear elbow sleeves at a meet, so you want to get prepped for doing that. And I've made that mistake before. Whereas I got too comfortable with the elbow sleeves, and it did make a little bit of a difference on meet day for sure. Not having that compression. I did use it in the warm-up room and stuff, but I would say 4 weeks out, I would get accustomed to it. Any of those lifts, those big lifts, so some of the things we do with our raw lifters is like a slingshot 1 rep max, a one board 1 rep max, those types of movements, and those are really determining numbers for us. So those would be situations where I say, hey, let's get out of the elbow sleeves for that. John Sanders, what's up, my friend? Thanks for joining in. Just completed your 8-week board press program with a 3-board bench blocks. Should I repeat the program with a 2-board? So you could definitely go down in boards. That's one way to do it, or you could just go through it again. If you got good results, continue to use a 3-board, but really up to you. 2-board, it's tough to tell. Any type. It's hard anytime you're putting together a program to put in specific board heights, because it's really going to be different to everyone, because everyone has a different range of motion. So the desired effect you're going to get out of a certain board is going to be different for everyone. I'm the strongest off of 1 board because it's a nice balance of cutting range of motion in my shirt and allowing me to actually load the shirt. So I've always done my best lifts off of 1 board. It's actually harder for me off a 2-board, even though it's not as much range of motion. I can't load the shirt. And then if I try to go over a 2-board, I'm not even going to get the weight to get over the board, to be honest with you. So, so my range of motion is just so short that, 1 board is mid-range for me. I can utilize a half board, whereas someone else, 4-board might be mid-range. And I definitely have athletes on the team who do a 4-board for mid-range work. Even a 5-board, not out of the question. Sip of coffee tea, guys. Jared Chirico, thanks for joining in, my friend. I've been bulking. That's always nice to hear. Keep that bulking going. But my bench has still been stuck at 185 for 3 months, and I bench 3 times a week. You suggest I add another day? So in that scenario, I really have to break down what you're doing on those days, but I wouldn't look to add another day. If anything, I would look maybe even to subtract a day, really depending on what you're doing. I'd have to know what you're doing. Because increased recovery, it's not always the answer to add more. Sometimes you need to do more, and usually you can look to accessories for that. Try to find that weak point in your bench. If it's the back or the triceps or shoulder stability, any of that, it's good to analyze what's going on and then attack it more with accessory work before you look to add actual benching. And 3 times a week is usually plenty sufficient. I usually wouldn't suggest adding another day. If anything, take benching away from the programming and add in more accessory work. That would be my suggestion, because especially on a bulk, the bench should go up. So definitely probably just stuck at a weak point. I wouldn't say benching more is the answer there. Ian Middleton, what is your bench with a bench shirt and without a bench shirt? So my best raw bench in competition did 2019 last year, and that was 440 pounds. I don't typically prep or prepare for a raw bench. If I tried to raw bench now, I tell you, it'd be hard to even get to 400. To be honest with you, that's because I've pretty much taken the whole year off with come up my shoulder. Something was going on with it, so I wasn't able to raw bench like I want. But I'm a shirted bencher, and my bench there is 820. Looking to try to break that this coming 4 weeks now, December 5th. So excited for that opportunity. And yeah, the big difference between the two, right? 440 to 820. Well, it really comes down to knowing how to use that equipment, because it doesn't make it easier. It's not like anyone could throw it on and get 400 pounds out of it. I'm blessed to have a shorter range of motion, so I can wear a tighter shirt, usually get away with that stuff. But it's taken years and years of really just dialing in that precision using that equipment. And it's not one of those scenarios where you can just throw on the shirt and gain that much. You know what I mean? Mike, hey coach, you available for a lift off? I wish, buddy. I wish I could make it out there. I really miss traveling, man. We got the bench clinic in Michigan. I hope that's going to be a great one. I'm super excited to get out there. So can't wait to just be able to get around and do meets with people. And the travel restrictions right now are kind of tough. Excited for Tiny's meet. Nothing's going to keep me out of that meet in March. I tell you what, if we can't fly there, we're going to drive there. Nothing's keeping me out of that Tiny meet. Tiny Meekers meet. Kelly Williams, how often do you do these live bench talks, or are they just random? So Kelly, you can get the bench talk live every Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. It's been like that since I guess since the pandemic started. I've started doing these on Tuesdays, 12 p.m. Eastern time, and we've stuck to it. So you know where to find me. Tuesdays, 12 p.m. Not quite on the bench, but I'm in the office. So yeah, tell a friend. Hey guys, just a quick note. Tell a friend. That's the biggest way you can help us spread the podcast. Give us a 5-star rating. All that really, really helps tremendously, and I'd really appreciate it. But really, just telling a friend, be like, hey, Tuesdays 12 p.m. is really cool. YouTube live show, and you can also catch this on Spotify as our podcast, the Bench Talk. I'm sorry, the Bench Cast. All right, so you can get replays of these and hear our smaller topic episode podcasts as well. Most people have Spotify. Just check out the Benchcast, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. Jared, I've been running the Candido's 6-week intermediate program. So I'm not familiar with the Candido program there, unfortunately, my friend. So I'm not sure what that exactly entails, but I know he's a very smart lifter and programmer. So I'm sure it's the programming is sorted out well. So I wouldn't look to add an extra day to that. Probably what's going on is you need to find that weak point in your training. Find a variation that you suck at and build that up. Try different movements. For me lately, JM press has really been a huge thing. I've been doing a lot of that. Bench has been feeling amazing. Good lockout strength. Sometimes it just comes down to more upper back strength too. And boy, can that make a difference. Way more than you probably think. It makes the weight feel so much lighter in your hands when you have a good, strong upper back and you can utilize it effectively. Sober powerlifting. Just got my big benches, elbow sleeves, and wrist straps. The best quality products and very fast delivery. Really appreciate that, Alan. I really appreciate the the order and the vote of confidence there. I do agree. The same products that I use as well. Our Big Bench's elbow sleeves keep my joint nice and warm, and also our wrist straps give me support to lift whatever weight I need to lift. I've used that. Most I've handled is 900 pounds. So, we had, all right, we're still going. Most I had in my hands is 900 pounds, and my wrist straps held up great. No problems there. So, yeah, I really appreciate that vote of confidence, my friend. You guys can check out bigbenches.com, our elbow sleeves, our compression wraps, wrist straps. We got a lot of good stuff there. Royston, some days I am extremely strong in the gym where I bench 365 for 5 reps, whereas some days I can bench only 345 for 1. What's the reason for fluctuating strength while benching? So I encountered this. What it really comes down to is either something's way off with nutrition or recovery, just the consistency day to day. If you don't have a set job at a set time and eating the same ways and it's fluctuating all over, then that can cause issues in your training. But what it usually the case is, if everything's pretty consistent, is that there's something technically missing. You're not sure what it is. Sometimes you're hitting on it, sometimes you're not. So I'll give you an example. For me, that inconsistency with the bench, with the takeout, right? So unracking the bar, I would have some days where I feel great benching in the 700s. And then days where 600 was a difficult thing for me. And it all came down to how that weight was coming out, how I was locking down the scaps and loading that weight. Whereas one time, I would chase the bar and that would put me in a really poor position. And the other times I was locking down real effectively, but I didn't realize either or until I started cueing myself in a certain way that made it consistent. So usually it's something's off in technique, and sometimes you're hitting on it, sometimes you're not. Okay, and if you find out what that is, you're gonna have many days where you're feeling, like you said, 250 or 365 for 5 reps. You're gonna have many of those days, my friend, if you can key in on that specific technical point that is missing. Kelly Williams, I always wondered, in a bench shirt, do you still retract your scapula or do you flat back bench in a shirt? Just wondering because the shirt seems like it pulls you forward so much. Yeah, so that's the difficult thing, is setting up in the shirt. The shirt really, hold on guys, I'm gonna close this. Some noise going on outside. So when it comes to the shirt, okay, I'll get back to your question. Sorry there, Kelly. So getting back to the shirt question here. Yes, you definitely want to retract. That's going to be huge, but the shirt makes it very difficult, right? So a lot of that comes down to how you're approaching that shirted setup. How you still have to get your scaps together, right? You're going to have all that compression of the shirt weighing down on you. So I always recommend, once you get into that setup, right, bridge up, get your hands, however you go about doing it. Once you set your hands, shimmy your scaps back down, and that'll help you get a lot more out of that positioning. And don't lock down the shirt too much. I actually don't like having my my belt super tight or jacked down, or the straps on my shirt very, very tight. I wear my straps super loose, so that shirt's not pushing down on my arch. I can arch much more effectively with a nice loose strap on the back side, and not having too tight of a bench belt and having someone pull my shirt. I hate having someone pull my shirt. If they want to slide my belt, that's fine, but pulling my shirt is going to pull me out of position, and I don't need that anyway. And this prelude a little bit, great segue. We just launched our shirted course, our online course for shirted benching. It's the definitive guide on shirted benching. It's literally everything I put into that in terms of tips and tricks and all that I can give you. So we're talking about how to break in a shirt, how to size a shirt, picking the right shirt, how to train in your shirt, using boards or not using boards. Really everything is in there, getting alterations done, things like that. You could go to bigbenches.com. If you click on online courses, it'll take you there. Okay. So again, bigbenches.com, online courses, click that tab, and that'll bring you there. All right, and that's available Monday, so you can pre-order right now, and it's available forever Monday. Okay, so you'll have that to access. You can check out those videos anytime. But 40 videos in there, bunch of links. So definitely check that out, guys. Atmospheric pressure dips work. I don't argue with that, my friend. I'm sure dips are super effective for you. Ian Middleton, I just turned 16 and my bench is 225 right now. How much do you think I could add in a year? It's hard to say. Those questions are always tough there, Ian, because it really just comes down to effort and if you hit on the right weak point and all that. So that's going to be something that I guess we'll just find out in time. I would say it wouldn't be uncommon if you added a good 40, 50 pounds. If not more. Really depends what you do with your body weight too and stuff like that. So, you're in a great spot. You're right spot right now. Matt, my girlfriend said all my protein powder was steroids and threw them out. How soon do I put her stuff by the street and change the locks? Always an interesting comment or question there, Matt. I'd say right away. David Lopez, what's set? What set or rep? What's set or rep and weight percentage do you recommend when using a slingshot? Do you utilize a slingshot in your training? Yeah, so mostly with our athletes right now, we'll do the slingshot and we'll either do it for 1 to 3 reps and use it for overload purposes. So we're really trying to get over 100%. As for secondary work, sometimes I'll throw in the slingshot like close grip and do board works. This dude's bench is my squat plus bench. Tom Soroman, I bench 500. That's great, Tom. That's a great bench right there. Geopower. Hey, coach, what's your favorite cue for the eccentric part of the bench? Raw training. Thank you. Anything to do with loading the back properly. I'm really big on when you get that weight out, hold it for 3 seconds, really give it a long hold and just work on how hard you can retract back. And you'll find you could probably get that bar to dip with locked out arms about a good maybe 1/4 inch or so extra. So I'm big on just getting that weight out, trying to lock up as much as you can with your back and try to position that bar lower and then set that initial eccentric with a row. Think of it as a row, engage your lats. That would be my biggest cueing for that. Whether you're raw or shirt, it remains the same. Mustafa Javadi. Hey, Coach Ben. Love you, man. Can't feel noticeable pressure on my fingerprints on the bar while lowering the bar, especially when using heavy weights. Does this mean that I don't implement lats the right way? So you don't feel the pressure of your fingerprints. I'm not sure if I'm understanding that. Seems like you're focusing on grip. So I'm not completely sure on that, my friend. If you could maybe clarify that question a bit, I can help you out. All right, so let's move on to some questions that came in the other day. When people say you're strong, but you feel like you're weak, should you compete? And my answer to this is that you're never going to feel like you're ready to compete. You're never going to feel like you're strong enough. I never feel like I'm strong enough. But you compete to try to better yourself every time. You're trying to compete honestly with yourself. It's not really competition with other people. Majority of powerlifting meets, unless it's at a super high level or a national meet, the competition is really on the person versus that same person. It's you versus you. Honestly, at most meets, you're not even going to know who else is in your division. It's just not clear cut. You're not even going to have an idea until they announce it at the end. So you're not even going to be watching what they're doing because you don't even know who you're competing with. So honestly, a lot of meets is just you versus you and trying to get better numbers each time. And I know the first meet is always kind of scary. It's always kind of nerve-wracking to jump into that first meet. But once you do it, you're hooked and you're going to be looking to do the next one and try to better your numbers. So it's just getting out there and doing that first one, get you over the hump, and then you're hooked, tell you. Or what is a good exercise to increase lat strength besides rows? So I'm assuming talking about barbell rows and all that. So To build the lats, I'd say any pull down variation is a great way. I like doing a V-bar hookup. So the little close grip V-bar there, hooking that up to a lat pull down. I love how that feels, getting full protraction and come back down. So all that's great. Machines, I love a lat pullover machine if your gym has one. They're kind of tough to come by. Not every gym has them, but they're very effective. So yeah, a lot of different options to train your lats. Doesn't necessarily have to be a heavy row. Could be a pull down variation or something similar like that. Dark Gamer BG, hello. If I bench with sinking the bar and I have a bigger arch, does bigger arch means bigger pop off the chest? So that's not something I usually coach, is that sinking type of heaving motion. That you might see Julius Maddox would do a lot of. And although he's the biggest raw bencher, technically that's definitely not how I'd ever coach the bench. So I'd imagine you could probably maybe get better pop if you had the arch and you collapse that. But I don't teach benching like that. It's all about control and precision and all that. So quite the opposite of what I coach. So I can't really help you out with that one, my friend. All right. And I wanted to touch on a great single ply question here. How do you find your groove in a single ply bench shirt? Well, really finding your groove in a single ply shirt versus a multi-ply shirt really doesn't make a difference. It should be a similar groove. So finding the groove, what I recommend is taking pretty lightweight weight that you probably won't touch and just working that for reps. Get some volume in the shirt, but use light enough weight that you can actually do that. That is going to help tremendously. Just practicing that groove, practicing how to pull into the touch, how to groove the weight back, because you need light enough weight. You're never going to be able to really change your groove in a bench shirt with heavy weight, because you're always in that kind of fight or flight. This is a heavy ass weight. I can't mess this up or I'm getting squashed. When you have lightweight, you can actually pull that bar down. Okay, so that is a huge training technique that I think a lot of shirted lifters miss out on, is they just don't work with light enough weight and get that volume in, and it really does pay dividends. Dark Gamer, and will heels up better than heels down? So I'm more of a heels flat guy. I think either or can be effective. And the reason why I bench with sink is because I have a 75% cut on my shoulder and I am weak off the chest because of that. Yeah, so I mean, however you have to modify your bench to make do. Sometimes that just is what it is. But yeah, typically that style can cause a lot of issues down at chest level too. So something to maybe consider reworking some right now. Going from like that heaving style to good controlled benching, that's very difficult to do. You're probably going to have to cut your weight back a bit to progress forward, and that's always tough, is to take that drop in weight and build back up. But again, when it comes to injuries, it's really just however you can bench, make it happen. Ian Middleton, I weigh 188 pounds as well right now, and I'm on a bulk trying to get up to 196. And so that, anytime you're bulking, that helps your bench tremendously. And then anytime you're cutting weight, I'd say the first thing that's affected is going to be your bench press. Just usually how it goes. It's, highly affected by body weight fluctuations, especially when you're in a bench shirt, because the shirt's going to fit differently and stuff. So you need to know how to adjust your shirt appropriately. Anyone looking for shirted bench tips, I laid it all out there in our new online course for shirted benching. It's called Mastering Shirted Benching. There is should be a link down below in this YouTube video, any of our YouTube, also our Instagram, link in the bio. And you can go to bigbenches.com, click the bench clinics tab, the bench course tab, and it'll bring you there. Everything on how to work the bench shirt, grooving the shirt, breaking in the shirt, what that process will look like, sizing the bench shirt. We even have a program available in that course. So it's jam-packed with all this great info. Just launched today, opens on Monday. pre-enrollment's going on now, so make sure you get in on that course. Best thing you could do for if you're a shirted bencher, I tell you what, I put everything in there. Kelly, if you get stuck at the bottom, do you think that it's just a back tightness problem? Well, it really depends. Usually that's where I would look to improve first is your back strength. What I would look to first. Typically, that'll make a big difference. But you gotta consider chest strength as well, especially if you have a long range of motion. Shoulder strength, all that plays a role. But I would definitely look back first, then chest if you have a weakness off the bottom. But really, I would just spend more time down there with the bar, creating tension, long pause holds, dead press, doing 3-second pauses and training with heavy weight. All that's going to help tremendously build up that bottom range. If I open my hands a little bit after the pop off the chest and the referee doesn't see it, it will be good lift. So the hands can open, at least in the federations that I'm familiar with, hands can open. So that shouldn't be a red light. Royston, 4 years ago, I snapped my arm while arm wrestling and had a humerus fracture. Went through surgery, have recovered now, although I feel slight pain at times. Will this affect my strength while benching? A snapped arm's never sounding good, so I'm sure it could potentially have its detriment on you, and that could be a long-term thing, but I wouldn't let that stop you. I'm sure you could get way past the strength that you were at previously. It's just something that happened, and that there's probably going to be lasting effects in there, but doesn't mean that you have to, sacrifice what you could do on your bench. Maybe your potential ceilings, maybe not as higher, but that really just comes down to work ethic and effort. So, I wouldn't consider that a detriment. I would just keep working hard, my friend. Kelly, who is your favorite lifter of all time and why? That's a tough one. I'm not really one to have favorites. It has to be a bencher. It has to be a big bencher. Scott Mendelson. He's done some crazy stuff. I've seen him like 1,000 pounds, one handoff in the gym. Tiny Meeker. He's amazing bencher. It's got to be a bencher. Because that's what we do. I'm a bench only guy through and through. Although I do compete full power time to time, but it has to be a bench guy because nothing like a big heavy shirted bench. I love that. How long have you been growing your beard for? I guess this has been going on 2 years now, but I'll trim it up every now and then, so it's not the full length it could be. So I just kind of keep it around here now. Dark Gamer, are rows 5x5 must if I want to bench more? And sorry for the dumb question. I just have competition after 2 months and I'm stressed so much. So you have a competition coming up in 2 months. That's awesome, my friend. Oh, enjoy it. Enjoy the experience. Enjoy the opportunity. Meets lately are fewer to come by. A lot of them are getting canceled, and it's just awesome being able to get to a competition. And so I'm sure you're going to do awesome. Are rows 5x5 necessary? No, you don't need to do 5x5 on rows to get a stronger back like that, or improve your bench. There's a lot of different back stuff that you can do. So you don't necessarily have to have that kind of volume for rows. No, there's a lot of different sets and rep schemes that you can utilize, stuff like that. All right, last question I'm going to take here from Adil's training. What's an ideal Larson press to normal bench ratio? If someone can bench 315, Larson press should be around where? I would take about 20-30 pounds off of that on average, if not a little bit more. It really depends. Like for me, I would sacrifice a lot because if I went Larson style as a feet out, not even feet on the pad, feet on the pad's already a detriment to me enough. Because it's a longer range of motion. I can't get into my usual setup and stuff. And then you really can't push off the pad when you're in a Larson press. So for me, it would probably be more significant. It'd probably be like a 30-40 pound thing. But it really depends. And that'll kind of be telling of what having that leg drive does for your bench press. And it might not be as much as you expect, but it's certainly a lot in terms of positioning, and then that a little bit of additional force as well. So I'd say hopefully you'd be able to get around 265, 275, if not a little bit more. Um, I really don't think it'll be a huge gap, but I'd say 295, 300 would be really good for that. Ideal's train, a sip of coffee. That's right, sip of coffee to you guys. All right, guys, I am going to be taking just a few more here. Let's go with Pierre. I haven't heard from Pierre. Can I afford to bench 3 times a week as a 17-year-old? Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of additional practice would be beneficial to you. Anytime you have higher frequency anything, you just have to watch how you're recovering from it and how you set it up in your programming so that you're not overdoing it. Okay, you're not doing something that you can't really recover from, or you slowly just overfill that recovery bucket and it eventually turns into discomforts and pains and things like that. So I definitely think you can bench 3 times a week. I think anyone can. Just really how you set that up. So maybe you have one heavy day, and maybe the other 2 days you're going pretty medium weight and not really pushing the weight too much. Maybe you have a speed day. But I do think having additional volume, especially at a younger age when you're still progressing so much, I think that can be really beneficial. Because that's also, you're not going to be at your full strength potential yet. Once you start getting stronger and stronger and stronger, it's harder because now you're lifting more weight and it's harder to recover from. Okay, when your squat max is 500 and then all of a sudden now your squat max is 1,000, recovery is going to be very different. So you take advantage of that now where you're not at your full strength potential yet, and you get a lot of that volume in, get a lot of good technique work in, and just practice. All right, guys, so I'm going to call it there today. I really appreciate everyone that tuned in. A really good time doing these, and just want to let everyone know that Sure to Bench course, go to bigbenches.com, online courses, that is launched today. Super excited about that product. That was a long time in the making. We put it all together, launched it today. So check that out. I'm sure you'll be seeing some things about that. You can go and subscribe to our newsletter on bigbenches.com to get updates and info on all new products and things like that. So again, I really appreciate it, guys. If you can tell a friend, Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. You can also check out the Benchcast on Spotify. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you, everyone that joined in, and we'll talk soon.